Welcome to Hard Script.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It started with 7 words that sounded casual, but they split something in me the second I heard them. I just want a week of no labels. We were sitting in a restaurant we used to call ours. Same booth, same late-night jazz in the background. But something felt different about her that night. Too relaxed, too rehearsed. She said it like it was a suggestion, like she was doing us both a favor. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I just looked at her, nodded once, and said, okay. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't agreeing. I was confirming what I already suspected. Her mind had left this relationship days ago, maybe weeks, and now she wanted a rule-free playground. She wanted freedom, but only for herself. That was the moment I quietly labeled her mistake and removed myself from the game. Not emotionally, not with a fight, strategically, permanently. That night, when she kissed me goodbye and said, "Thanks for understanding," I didn't flinch. I walked to my car, drove home, and started clearing space. Literally. Her things, what little she kept at my place, were folded and packed before midnight. I didn't message her the next day, didn't ask what she was doing with her new freedom. I went to the gym early, booked a weekend trip out of town, shut off notifications. By the time day 1 of her rule-free week officially began, I was already out of reach. Because here's the thing most people don't grasp about silence. It's not always passive. Sometimes it's precision. She wanted no rules? Fine. No contact is also a rule, and I followed it better than she ever expected. By day 2, she texted, "Hope you're having a good day." I didn't answer. By day 3, "We should talk soon." I left it unread. The less I responded, the more she cracked. But I wasn't doing it to hurt her. I was showing her exactly what a world without me really looked like. She thought she could test the waters without getting wet. But I wasn't water. I was the tide, and I had already pulled back. That's the hook most never see coming. When the man who used to give everything gives you nothing. Not a word, not a warning, just an absence so complete, it echoes louder than anything you expected to hear. And that silence? That's where this story really begins. Day 4 of her rule-free week, and I was already gone in every way that mattered. Physically, I was in another city. I took that weekend trip and made sure not to post anything. No stories, no check-ins. Just distance, real and digital. Emotionally, I was already sealed off. No anger, no revenge, no overthinking. I wasn't plotting. I was erasing. Quietly, strategically. But here's the thing about people who crave control. They start unraveling when no one is watching them anymore. She wanted no labels, no rules, but she didn't expect complete detachment. She thought I'd play along while she tested limits. Thought I'd stay close enough to orbit, but far enough to avoid responsibility. But I wasn't orbiting. I had launched. And she felt it. I know this because of Jackson, my friend since college, someone she always thought was just a casual acquaintance. He sent me a message that said, "You might want to see this." Attached was a screenshot. It was her. Out late. Not scandalous, but not careful either. She was with a guy from her office. Same one I'd once caught lingering too long at her birthday dinner. Same one she swore was just a work friend. Now, in the photo, he was leaning in too close. Her hand was on his knee. She wasn't hiding. She looked proud, as if daring the world to question her. Except the world didn't need to question her, because I already had the answer. Jackson's message came with no commentary, just facts. And that's all I needed. I didn't respond to him either. Not right away. I wasn't going to reward the leak. I wasn't going to feed the fire. I just noted it, filed it away. And that's the difference between pain and precision. Pain reacts. Precision records. That night, she called me. I didn't pick up. Then she texted, "You okay? Haven't heard from you in a few days." Still, I said nothing. Because the real strike wasn't in yelling. It wasn't in confrontation. It was in giving her the one thing she wasn't built to survive. Absolute emotional vacuum. She expected consequences. She expected maybe jealousy, a challenge, a scene. But she didn't expect emptiness. And that's what I gave her. No lecture. No closure. Just the mirror of her choices, held up in silence. What she didn't know was that I had already started changing everything. Not loudly. Not spitefully. Just completely. Passwords. Access. Backups. Anything connected to her, removed. Bank authorizations. Streaming profiles. Shared calendars. Gone. I was pulling the plug on every corner of my life she used to casually occupy. Because the real rule of detachment? Don't announce it. Live it. Quietly. By the time she realized the shift wasn't temporary, the walls were already dry. The paint was already fresh. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was already gone. The moment I saw that photo, something inside me clicked into place. Not rage, not heartbreak, but clarity. There's a specific kind of silence that follows confirmation. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shake. It just settles deep in your chest like cold steel. I didn't need to confront her. I didn't even need to know how far it had gone. But the strategist in me, he wanted to be sure. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. Just for the record. Because when you walk away, you don't look back unless you've documented everything. Not for drama. For peace. I spent the next few hours quietly gathering things she never thought I'd notice. Bank records. Subscription charges she'd made with my card without asking. Small ones, subtle, buried in monthly bills. Gym classes she signed up for. Food delivery from addresses I didn't recognize. There was a dinner for two charged to my card 3 nights before her rule-free declaration. 2 entrees. 2 drinks. A bottle of wine. But she had told me she stayed in that night because she was feeling off. She wasn't lying. She was just hiding. Next came the message history. I didn't dig through her phone. I didn't need to. Our cloud backups used to sync. She forgot to disable it when she started living her double life. I found chat logs between her and the same guy from the photo. Casual at first, then coded. Nicknames. Emojis. Inside jokes. The kind of intimacy you don't build in a week. This had been unfolding while she was still calling me her person. She once texted him, "I just want space to explore this without pressure." He answered, "Then don't let him guilt you. You deserve your own rules." It was all there. Her plan wasn't about a break. It was about an exit, with a backup already waiting. And still, I didn't call. I didn't expose her. I just kept moving. Because knowing the truth isn't about what you do with it. It's about what you don't have to do anymore. I stopped checking her messages after that. Stopped wondering where she was or who she was with. She had made her map clear. And now I was erasing myself from every route that led back to her. That night, I returned home and started phase 2. Reset. Changed every password. Canceled every shared plan. Removed her fingerprints from the smart lock. The apartment we once called ours was now mine. Fully, silently. Even the photos, those curated snapshots she loved posting, were taken down. Not deleted. Archived. Because even erasure has a purpose when done with precision. I started sleeping better that week. No more 2 a.m. calls. No more wondering if her silence meant something was wrong, or someone was there. The calm that followed wasn't relief. It was resolution. Because when you stop pretending something is whole, you can finally see the cracks for what they are, permanent. And once you accept that, you don't tape them up. You walk away from the structure entirely. By day 6, she started realizing something was wrong. Not because I said it, but because the silence was too complete. There's a kind of absence that doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like an execution. Precise. Measured. Final. I hadn't posted. I hadn't responded. I hadn't reacted. And that scared her more than any fight ever could. People like her. People who manipulate emotions for control. They rely on friction. They need the push-pull. The tension. Even chaos is comfort if it keeps them in the center of your attention. But I gave her none of that. I wasn't angry. I was gone. And when I disappeared, I made sure it wasn't dramatic. Just surgical. No announcements. No last conversations. Just a quiet extraction. I forwarded my mail to a new box. Rerouted my work calls to a different number. And for the first time in months, I left my phone face down, without anxiety. Then I did something she didn't expect. I blocked her. Not just on social media, but everywhere. Phone, email, shared drives, streaming accounts. All of it. Not to punish her. To remove the possibility of returning. That was always her trick. Leave just enough space to crawl back into. One late-night text. A song sent at 2:03 a.m. Miss you, when things got dull on the other side. But I had closed the loop before she even reached the door. Day 7. She tried calling from a friend's phone. "Hey, I think she's trying to reach you. She said you've been distant." I answered the friend with one sentence. "There's nothing left to discuss." Then I blocked them too. Not out of spite. Out of principle. Because the moment you start explaining to someone who already disrespected your time, you're wasting even more of it. She made her decision. I made mine. And that week she thought would be some experimental phase, some dramatic pause before the reset. Turned out to be the final chapter she never meant to write. And I never meant to read again. Here's the thing about disappearing the right way. You don't ghost. You reposition. You become unavailable not out of fear, but out of clarity. People who violate your trust don't deserve your presence. Not even your anger. Just your absence. And it wasn't just digital. I moved the key under the mat. Took the one she had made for herself and dropped it off with the leasing office. Replaced the bedding. Switched the scent in the apartment. Diffuser, curtains, even the damn coffee brand. You don't heal by sitting in the ashes. You build somewhere the fire never reached. And while she tried to calculate her next move, I'd already folded the board and walked away from the game entirely. She wanted a week without rules. She got a lifetime without me. The thing about people like her is that they never jump without a net. She didn't want space. She wanted a soft landing. And she thought she had it. The friend from work. The quiet flirtation turned fallback. The one she used to say was just someone to vent to. But when someone builds a second life before ending the first, they're not looking for freedom. They're making sure they're never alone. And that's what I decided to take from her. Not by force. Not with noise. But with information. He worked at the same company, 2 floors below her. Different department, but they shared projects. Shared meetings. And, apparently, shared hotel rooms during conferences. She thought I didn't know. She thought I wouldn't care. But here's what happens when you give your full attention to someone who thought you weren't watching. They leave a trail. A month before our break, she asked to borrow my laptop. Hers was acting up. She logged into her cloud to download a file and never logged out. I never said anything. Didn't peek. Didn't pry. Until now. When I opened it, there were folders. Innocent names. Generic dates. But inside, PDFs, screenshots, chat logs, photos. Some were work-related. Most weren't. One of them was a list, handwritten, scanned. A private journal entry, dated 2 months back. I feel alive around him. It's not like with Mark. He's safe, but I need passion. I think I'm ready to take the risk. Safe. That's what she called me. Like I was a fallback. A guarantee. That entry didn't hurt. It focused me. Because what she failed to understand was this. You don't make someone your emotional insurance and expect no consequences. So I looked deeper. Found email threads where she forwarded confidential project drafts to him. Documents she wasn't supposed to share. That's when I knew exactly how this story would end for them. Not with a bang, but with collapse. I didn't send the emails to her boss. That would have been petty. Instead, I sent them anonymously to HR, attached timestamps. Subject lines. Her forwarded messages, word for word. Then I deleted the account. Not revenge, just revelation. Let the structure fall, not by my hand, but by her own fingerprints. By the time she tried reaching out again, through a mutual friend I hadn't yet blocked, word had already started circulating. She'd been called in for a meeting. I heard she cried. Said she didn't realize it looked that serious. But perception is power. And she had lost control of both. Her backup plan, cracking. Her image, questioned. And all of it was unfolding without me ever saying a word. That's what people never expect. They think silence means surrender. But sometimes, it's the sound of something being built quietly behind the scenes. A consequence with no name. A countermove already in motion. She used to walk into rooms like gravity bent around her. Not loud. Not obnoxious. Just calculated. Confident that no matter what mess she left behind, she could charm her way through the wreckage. But control isn't about how you enter a room. It's about what happens when you're no longer the center of it. The day after her HR meeting, something shifted. I didn't see it directly, but it came to me through people we once called mutuals, voices I didn't ask for, but listened to carefully. Did you hear about Lauren? She might be in real trouble at work. I mean, it's not confirmed, but she crossed a line. No one mentioned my name. That was the best part. I was invisible in the fall, a ghost with receipts. And while she tried to spin the narrative, it was just a misunderstanding. They're blowing things out of proportion. The eyes started turning. At work, among her friends, even her own sister, who had always been one of her fiercest defenders, called me one night. I didn't answer, but the voicemail played like a confession. She's spiraling. You don't have to talk to me, but I think she finally realizes what she's done. That's the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is private. Shame needs an audience. She didn't feel bad for betraying me. She felt exposed. Because the mask she wore so easily, collected, progressive, in control, was cracking. And when your entire identity depends on perception, one fracture is all it takes to shatter the whole illusion. I watched it unfold from the sidelines. Friends who once liked every filtered photo of us together stopped commenting altogether. A coworker she used to brunch with every Saturday posted a quote that hit too close. If you have to hurt someone to feel free, you're not free. You're just cruel. No tags, no names. But everyone knew. That was the point. Not public humiliation, but private realization that the stage was empty and the spotlight wasn't coming back. She texted from a different number. I never meant for it to go like this. I didn't reply, because intent is meaningless when the damage is strategic. She didn't trip into betrayal. She mapped it out. And now she was watching the structure collapse, with no one left to blame. And no one left to call. Silence wasn't my revenge. It was my replacement for the energy I used to spend fixing what she kept breaking. That week, I saw her walking out of the coffee shop we both used to go to. Alone. No sunglasses. No smile. Our mutual barista, who once knew our order by heart, handed me my drink without asking. He didn't mention her, but he raised an eyebrow and simply said, "Man, you're glowing." That's the thing about reclaiming your space. People notice when your silence is cleaner than their chaos. And she was learning, in real time, what it feels like when the world stops orbiting around you. Not because it hates you, but because it finally sees you. There's a unique silence that hits when the audience you counted on is no longer clapping. Not because they've turned against you, but because they've stepped away. Quiet rejection. Social withdrawal. No big speech. Just space. That's where Lauren ended up. When the structure around her finally gave out, it wasn't one big fall. It was incremental. Like watching a house rot from the inside, until the beams gave way without warning. And the worst part? No one rushed in to save her. I started hearing less and less about her. Not because people weren't talking, but because they didn't care. She became background noise. The kind of story people refer to in past tense. I used to know her. That was her new reputation. No scandal. No headline. Just a woman who made one wrong move too many and found herself outside the circle she'd once ruled. Even her new backup, the guy she'd bet on when she asked for that rule-free week, had gone cold. Turns out, you can't build something real on the ashes of betrayal. Especially not when the one you betrayed didn't fight back, didn't beg, didn't chase. He told a friend of mine, who later told me without asking, "She's too much drama." I didn't sign up for all that fallout. So she was alone. Still had her apartment. Still had her car. Still had her curated online life. But those things can't sit with you at 2 a.m. when it's quiet and you've got no one left to lie to. And I know how I sound. Cold. Unmoved. But that's what happens when you've been burned quietly, repeatedly, over time. Eventually, the fire inside you isn't rage. It's clarity. It wasn't revenge I was watching unfold. It was gravity. The natural return of energy she'd thrown at others, finally bouncing back. Meanwhile, my world had gotten quieter and better. I slept. Deeply. I started working out again, not to impress anyone, but because it reminded me what control felt like. I reconnected with friends she'd subtly pulled me away from. And not once, through all that rebuilding, did I feel like I missed her. Because you don't miss the hand that pushed you down. You remember it. You study it. And then you make sure you never let it touch you again. I passed by her once. At the park. She was sitting alone on a bench, looking at her phone like she was waiting for a message that wasn't coming. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to react. Either way, I walked on. Straight posture. Clear eyes. Not because I wanted her to see what she lost, but because I no longer cared if she did. There's a freedom in detachment. A cold, precise peace that replaces every moment you spent justifying your worth to someone who never valued it. And now? Now she gets to sit in the silence she once weaponized. And I don't sit anywhere near it. It was a Thursday evening when the knock came. Not loud, not rushed, just expectant. The kind of knock that assumes it will be answered. I opened the door halfway, and there she stood. Lauren. Same perfume, same leather jacket. But everything else about her was different. The posture, the hesitation in her breath. She didn't look confident. She looked displaced. Like someone who'd taken a wrong turn and ended up at a house they once knew but no longer belonged to. She didn't speak right away. She waited. probably expecting warmth. Maybe even curiosity. I gave her neither. Just stillness. Finally, she said, "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, not as an invitation, but as a test. She walked in slowly, scanning the room. I'd repainted since she left. Different furniture. New art on the wall. The record players she used to roll her eyes at? Front and center now. Playing vinyl. She noticed. Her face tightened, like she realized how much life had moved without her. She sat down across from me. "I made mistakes," she began. I didn't interrupt. I never meant for things to spiral the way they did. I was confused. I felt stuck. Still, I stayed quiet. This wasn't new. It was her old trick. Fill the silence before it turned into consequences. She wanted to explain, to repaint history in softer shades. But the thing is, truth doesn't need decoration. It just needs time, and I'd had plenty. So I let her keep talking. Let her fill the air with phrases like wrong timing, bad decisions, and maybe we rush things. And when her voice started to shake, she looked up at me, waiting for a response. I gave her the only one I had left. "You don't get to rewrite the ending." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but the room was already closed. What she didn't know is that I hadn't rehearsed this. I didn't plan for her return, because I hadn't expected one. When someone exits your life like a wrecking ball, you don't stand at the door hoping they'll knock again. You rebuild with thicker walls. She stood up. Not angry, not desperate, just defeated. As she reached the door, she paused and said, "You used to fight for me." I nodded once. I did, until I realized I was the only one in the fight. Then she left. No slam, no drama, just a door closing like punctuation, final and quiet. And when I sat back down, I didn't feel relief or triumph, just stillness. That was the real win. Not the confrontation, not the closure, but the fact that nothing she said shifted me. I had become untouchable not because I built walls, but because I stopped needing to be understood by the person who never really saw me to begin with. She wanted answers, but she came too late for questions. After that night, she didn't try again. Not directly, but echoes have a way of reaching you when you least care to hear them. I'd walk into a bar and catch whispers. Someone who knew someone who said she was going through things. I never asked for details. I didn't need to, because I'd already lived through the foreshadowing. Everything happening now was just the aftermath catching up. Her work situation had deteriorated. She wasn't fired, but she'd been moved to a quiet role, something administrative, stripped of authority. No projects, no clients, just cold desks and tight smiles. She'd lost her edge. And more importantly, the perception of being someone who couldn't be touched. That was always her armor, reputation. And now it was gone. Her backup man, the one who gave her spark, had ghosted her entirely. Apparently, once she became a liability, his interest evaporated. She tried reconnecting with friends, but the ones who didn't avoid her were only polite. Surface level. No invitations. Just small talk that reminded her how far she'd fallen. Even her social media started changing. Less curated, more forced. Generic quotes about growth and healing. A couple of photos that felt staged, like someone trying to prove something they didn't believe. The most telling moment came from her sister. I ran into her at a bookstore, completely by accident. She spotted me before I could pretend not to see her. She said, "I don't know what happened between you two, and maybe it's not my business, but she's not the same. It's like she's finally feeling it." I didn't respond. I just nodded and walked away. Because I knew exactly what Lauren was feeling. Not guilt. Not regret. Emptiness. The same emptiness I felt the night she turned her back and thought I'd wait for her to return. But I hadn't waited. I had rebuilt. My apartment felt like mine again. My mornings weren't heavy. I cooked. I read. I picked up photography, something she used to call pointless. I started seeing someone new. Slowly. Cautiously. But with none of the emotional gymnastics I'd been trained to perform before. And through all of it, I didn't once think, maybe she'll change. Because the truth is, I no longer cared if she did. Her collapse wasn't satisfying. It wasn't revenge. It was expected. Because when you burn every bridge while assuming they'll be rebuilt for you, one day you look up, and there's nothing left to cross. She lost more than me. She lost the version of herself she could pretend to be in my presence. And now, all she had left was the mirror. That's the final cost of betrayal. Not that people walk away, but that no one comes back. The last time I saw her, I didn't recognize her at first. Not because she looked different, but because she didn't carry the same weight in the room. No tension, no anticipation, no spark of manipulation ready to ignite. She was just there, a face among others, diminished, background noise. It was at a mutual friend's birthday, the kind of gathering where people smile politely and avoid anything too real. I hadn't planned on staying long. I'd learned to protect my peace, and she was the one person I had once needed protection from. She saw me. Of course she did. But for the first time, she didn't approach. No performance. No rehearsed apology. Just a glance that lasted a second too long, then dropped to the floor. And in that moment, I knew everything. She wasn't waiting for closure. She was living inside it. Because closure doesn't come when someone explains themselves. It comes when they no longer have access to your space, your energy, your attention. That night, I left early. Not because of her, but because I had somewhere else to be. Someone else to be. I walked home, alone, through quiet streets. Crisp air, no music, no distractions. Just the calm rhythm of footsteps that finally belonged to a man who didn't carry someone else's weight. And as I turned the key to my place, I realized something. I hadn't just walked away from her. I had walked away from the version of myself that tolerated her. The one who explained, defended, absorbed the emotional blows like it was a badge of love. He was gone now, replaced by silence and strength. I deleted the last photo of us that night. Not out of anger, but out of completion. There was no reason to keep a reminder of a chapter that no longer informed the story. And in that act, quiet, final, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Not the dramatic kind. Not fireworks or grand speeches. Just the clean kind. The kind that doesn't need to be posted or validated. The kind that lives in the details, unfollowed accounts, cleared drawers, blocked numbers, a full night's sleep. She faded, slowly. Not as a villain, but as someone I once loved. Before I learned what love actually looks like. And me? I didn't just survive. I refined. I became someone who no longer asks why someone broke me, but instead asks why I let them stay. That's the shadow. Not loud. Not cruel. Just precise. Quiet. And final. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.